Council President Tony Perkins also applauds the president and his administration. Southern Baptist will be gathering in Birmingham, Alabama for their annual convention. Among the issues they plan to address, sexual abuse and racism. AFN's Steve Jordahl reports it's how they plan to deal with those issues that is drawing concern.
Church leaders and lay people called messengers will gather next week in Birmingham to consider, among other things, amendments to its constitution meant to address charges in the media of child sexual abuse at SBC churches, as well as the formation of a standing committee that will investigate such claims and recommend action that could lead to breaking ties with some churches. Messenger Rob Chambers says there are already safeguards in place to keep predators away from church kids.
Pastors, teachers, Sunday school teachers, child daycare workers are already compelled by state law to report any suspected abuse. So how is a level of bureaucracy going to compel them any more than the state statute already does?
The racism component is less clear. Baptist Press reports leadership has already adopted a proposal that would only deem a church in friendly cooperation that, quote, has not acted to affirm, approve, or endorse discriminatory behavior on the basis of ethnicity. An SBC spokesman told American Family News that the proposal is in part because of numerous reported incidents of racially motivated clashes across the country in the past several years.
That has the flavor of an expansion of social justice within the Southern Baptist Convention.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
In final news this hour, a gallon of regular gasoline will set you back on average $2.78 a gallon today. It was $2.93 a gallon on this day last year. Find more news at onenewsnow.com. Thanks for listening.
Holy Spirit speaks to everybody. The problem is most folks don't listen.
Lonnie Poindexter.
If they do listen, they don't take it to heart or they get fearful or whatever. But when you listen and act upon it, wonderful things happen. And because a man of God heard the voice of God and acted upon it, it blesses me today. And you as well for listening in.
Lion Chasers. Weekday mornings at 10 Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
75 years ago, hundreds of thousands of young soldiers, sailors, and airmen left these shores in the cause of freedom. It is with humility and pleasure, on behalf of the entire country, indeed the whole free world, that I say to you all, thank you.
It was here that tens of thousands of the Americans came. The GIs who boarded the landing craft that morning knew that they carried on their shoulders not just the pack of a soldier, but the fate of the world. In defeating that evil, they left a legacy that will last not only for 1,000 years, but for all time. May God bless our great veterans. May God bless our allies. May God bless the heroes of D-Day. And may God bless America.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Hey, welcome to the program. I am so honored to be broadcasting today as we commemorate 75 years that have passed since D-Day, celebrating this moment with our listeners, with everyone across the world as we celebrate the crushing of evil and the spread of freedom and liberty to so many people who they really didn't have an opportunity for it beforehand is a true honor. And I think one of the indicators of how momentous this moment is for us as an international community and a group of nations that really came together in our time of need is the fact that they've actually had some really positive things from the mainstream media about President Trump's decision to read the prayer of Dwight D. Eisenhower, which we have a little bit of that audio for you. And also, I was able to find actual original audio of Dwight D. Eisenhower talking to the American people and praying over them in a much different time in this nation. And so it's really so exciting to be able to just celebrate that and pause for a moment and contemplate and consider the freedom that we have now because of the heroics and really bravery beyond the circumstances of so many men who took it upon themselves to go off and really to fight in a war, knowing the possibility that they would not return was greater than possibly their being able to return, and they went anyway. So welcome to the program. This hour, we're going to be chatting with Fred Jackson. He's a news director at American Family News. News of the day, we're going to cover a ton of different topics. We always love it when Fred is able to join us. He's super busy and super hot on the network, so it's a real treat to get to have him today. We're going to talk about Atlanta turning 7 acres of vacant land into the largest free food forest in the country. And I love this story. It's a good news story. I can't wait to talk about it. And then we're also going to get into a survey that's out today. 46% of voters support the tariffs to force Mexico to get tougher on illegal immigration. And a lot of details on that. So I want to start off with President Dwight D. Eisenhower. This prayer was about 7 minutes long. Well, the prayer was maybe 5.5 minutes long. He had a little bit of an intro to it where he addressed the American people before he began to pray. We just have a bit of it. The part that I found most compelling, and the whole thing is amazing, but this part was particularly compelling to me. And I wanted us to listen to it because of the time that we're in now, because most of our Christian heritage is under attack, and the onslaught is relentless, and it's complete, and it's total. And people are really, they seem to have lost the idea that as a nation together, we once used to pray. We once felt that prayer was not just an option, but it was a requirement. It was something that we had to do, and that we didn't just do it individually and as families, we did it corporately as a nation. I'm stunned by how different the demeanor is here of this president praying over his people than really anything that we see nowadays, especially coming from the Christian left. So let's listen to it. It's number 3.
The darkness will be rent by noise and flame. Men's souls will be shaken with the violences of war. For these men are lately drawn from the ways of peace. They fight not for the lust of conquest. They fight to end conquest. They fight to liberate. They fight to let justice arise and tolerance and goodwill among all thy people. They yearn but for the end of battle, for their return to the haven of home. Some will never return. Embrace these, Father, and receive them, thy heroic servants, into thy kingdom. And for us at home, fathers, mothers, children, wives, sisters, and brothers of brave men overseas, whose thoughts and prayers are ever with them, help us, Almighty God, to rededicate ourselves in renewed faith in Thee in this hour of great sacrifice.
So he's praying for a number of different things, but I felt like in listening to him this morning and listening to his attitude, just taking it all in, that the verse for today, an appropriate verse for today, celebrating 75 years since D-Day, is Psalm 28:9. Save your people and bless your inheritance. Be their shepherd and carry them forever. Save your people and bless your inheritance. Be their shepherd and carry them forever. Now, obviously, we all know that God is our shepherd. He watches over us. He takes care of us. And a lot of that reference is normally associated exclusively with Psalm 23. But the psalm that I just read to you, Psalm 28:9, is actually a plea for God to actively shepherd his people today and into the future. A prayer that is something we should be continually going to the Father with, but even more important, that we have to pray for God's presence to be not just with us, but with our children and with our service members and with our leaders, both sides of the political aisle, our local municipal leaders, our governors, everyone, that we have to be praying that God would be with them in their decision making. And in the really perilous times such as these, that he would shine his light on them and that the darkness would be driven away so that they could make decisions that actually benefit the people they've been elected to serve. And so I thought, Psalm 28:9, it's also appropriate when we consider what was done for us, when our troops banded together with the troops of other countries and went out to vanquish the enemy and did so. And they did so under God's blessing, not just because the president at that time, Eisenhower, was praying over them, but because so many families and churches here at home in America were praying for the victory and safe return of those men. And so the president has been for the past 24 hours celebrating these men overseas. One of them, I believe he's 93 years old, he parachuted out onto the beaches of Normandy to commemorate those who fell and have fallen since, who did originally 75 years ago that same trip. And I just think about the bravery and the heroism, which we still have this day. We still have brave heroes who fight in our armed forces, and they go out and they leave sometimes their sanity, sometimes parts of themselves behind in our theaters of war around the world. And they do it not because they agree with the cause, but because they've pledged themselves to serve this country and to support and defend the Constitution. And so it's just a beautiful thing for us to get to kind of stop and pause and consider the goodness of God, his graciousness in maintaining our nation, and the goodness of the people who have, for decade after decade, year after year, day after day, continually offered themselves up as a living sacrifice on our behalf, serving in our armed forces. And so for our wartime heroes and the families that survived them and carry their memories, you have our honor today. We salute you. And I think it's also nice to see some kind words about the president. It's so rare that anyone gives him any credit in the mainstream media for anything, to see them saying nice things about him because of his demeanor and deportment overseas for D-Day. It's nice. It's a nice thing. I was afraid that a baby pig, a cute, cartoonish looking baby pig, might slam into one of the windows here and break through and cause a whole lot of property damage. Hasn't happened yet, but I'm still waiting because I did see really nice things said about the president today. So, sorry. I keep saying it's Eisenhower. It's President Roosevelt who gave that prayer. Hold on. I'm going back to my sheet here. I've listened to so much content today. I may be a little bit off on that. And so now I want to turn to, I have that down as Eisenhower, but he's saying it's Roosevelt. Let me go there. I just want to verify that. I don't want to be giving you the wrong info. Okay. Oh, yeah, it says FDR D-Day prayer. Yeah. Okay. Correction. That is Roosevelt, President Roosevelt praying over there. So in any case, we have a lot more on the program for you here today. We're going to be chatting with Fred Jackson, news director at American Family News, about news of the day. You can go to onenewsnow.com and find more information there. And you can find some of the stories that they're working up right at this moment. And they have a couple of nice pieces over here, historical pieces. Before the beachhead came a bloody fight, et cetera, et cetera. They're a substitute getting let go after telling students that they had atrocious grammar. And Democrats' dream and promise quite incendiary, says Fair. And this is about immigration enforcement. I also have, and so Ally Pack has been really, really upset with the president for the different things that are going on with illegal immigration. And so they have sent out an email today that is pretty harsh on President Trump on what they feel like he could be doing, he should be doing, and what he is doing on the immigration front. And you might have seen also just this enormous crush of illegal aliens that have come through, and they're in standing room only type facilities, and another person has died, a woman has died crossing the desert coming into this country, and they seem to want to blame U.S. Border Customs and Enforcement for all of these things, when the reality is, if they're crossing the desert and they have not been seen, and our immigration people are stretched so thin, there's no way that they can take care of everyone who's coming through individually or in groups. There just aren't enough of our people to do it. The answer is to simply shut down the border. Now, I know I've said that before, and it's a answer of last resort, but if we shut down the lawful points of entry, then they could send those people to the parts of the border that are currently unmanned. And that would enable us to catch and turn around more of these people. And then the other thing that shutting down the border would do is to ultimately place all of the pressure back on Mexico, because they're facilitating the invasion. If we don't do that, if we're not willing to take that extraordinary step, then I kind of feel like the rhetoric surrounding the border is empty. If we have any means left to us by which to stop this, to slow it down, to handle it, and we're not taking those steps, then what are we doing? We're just talking. And the talk is pretty cheap right now when, as people are noting, children are dying in custody and adults are now dying in the crossing, which we've highlighted that here on the show many times before. We've talked about how it's an absolute atrocity that people are traveling through and dying without anybody even knowing about it, and their bodies, sometimes just their bones, found out in the desert. And there's a group, a not-for-profit group, we covered it on the show. They go out there and they collect the remains and keep track of how many they collect on a yearly basis, just to make sure that for posterity's sake, some record is kept of the people who are dying trying to get in here. And the Republicans are complicit in this. I hate it that they are, but they are. All right, when we get back, we'll have Fred Jackson and more Stacy on the right. Stay right there.
I've been leading tours to Israel for over 25 years. Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. I started going to Israel with my dad in the 80s and learned how to lead tour groups. And so been doing it ever since. And now my wife has joined me, Allison, and we love taking folks who support AFA and listen to AFR to Israel. And we'd love to have you come along with us as well. That's in March of 2020. We're letting you know ahead of time because we know that people need as much advance notice as possible to get ready for a trip like this. So if you want to go with us to the Holy Land in March, go ahead and get the information at twholyland.com. That's twholyland.com. All the information on the March trip to Israel is posted there, and hope you can join us.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. Sadly, through the years, I've met a lot of people who profess to be followers of Christ, but whose lifestyles don't match their profession. I even know of people who flagrantly flaunt immoral lives and an assortment of other sinful patterns without the slightest hint of remorse, guilt, or conviction. Yet they claim to be followers of Christ. As followers of Christ, we too can struggle with life-controlling sin. You can be a legitimate follower of Christ and struggle with sinful habits. So to be born again does not necessarily mean your life is free of struggle. But what you are drawn to says a lot about the condition of your heart. It's sort of a spiritual statement about where you really stand before God. If you are constantly pulled toward evil, you need to question whether or not you really belong to God. In Proverbs chapter 6, verses 16 through 18, God gives us a list of things that he absolutely hates. There are 6 things which the Lord hates. Yes, 7, which are an abomination to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, now get this, and feet that run rapidly to evil. He didn't say people who occasionally have problems with sin. He didn't even say people who struggle with sin. He said he hates feet that run rapidly to evil, that are constantly doing things wrong, looking for things that are wrong. What are you constantly running to, my friend? Do you have a heart to run toward God, or are you consistently running toward evil? Here's what I want you to remember today. Are you sure you're a follower of Christ? If you're in doubt, make sure. Surrender your heart and life to Him today. Turn your feet toward God's heart.
More information about the ministry of Crawford Loritz can be found online at livingalegacy.org.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hey there. Welcome back to the program. You can find out more, and don't forget to go to stacyontheright.com. That is where you're going to find a whole bunch of the current content. And if anything should ever happen with social media, as you've seen, they banned Stephen Crowder. Demonetized him. He's still there, but now he can't earn a living on YouTube. And so many others who are on the list. Candace Owens. There are a ton of big names that have been threatened with banning or banned or demonetized. But you can always find them on their individual websites, as you can with me. So you can always go to afr.net. Facebook has no control there. UrbanFamilyTalk.com, also not affiliated with Facebook or YouTube. You can always find that up and running. And then, of course, our terrestrial radio, which you're listening to, that is our stuff. Facebook can't stop it. And StacyOnTheRight.com. So right now it's my pleasure to welcome Fred Jackson, news director at American Family News. Hey, Fred, thanks for joining us today.
Hello, Stacy. How you doing?
I'm pretty good. I just I spent some time this morning chatting with another radio host on another Christian network, and we were actually on the phone about another issue that we had scheduled before, and our conversation turned to the demonetization of Stephen Crowder, who I happen to know, him and his wife, from years ago. We used to go to Americans for Prosperity blogger conferences, and that's when I met him, and back then she was his fiance. And so this was before he had the huge YouTube presence. He was mainly on Fox News a lot, and he was doing comedy and stuff like that. Well, now he's got 1 million followers on YouTube, and he earns about $1 million a year with his daily syndicated radio program and other videos that they do. And YouTube just demonetized him for doing the same kind of humor that leftists do all the time. And they did it because Vox.com wanted them to, not because he violated their term of service. It's the craziest thing ever, isn't it, Fred?
Well, I just think it's part of the ongoing war that we're seeing against any kind of conservative opinion. And I think you're just going to see more of this kind of thing. In my years in this business, I have never seen the more open, I guess. There's always been hostility against biblical Christian conservative values. But it's been mitigated somewhat by, I think, a community standard that's somewhat adhered to biblical values. But now I think we have all-out war. And it's really interesting that we're discussing this because just in the last few hours, not sure if you've seen this, the Washington Supreme Court, that's the state Supreme Court in the state of Washington, has ruled once again against Barronelle Stutzman and upholding a previous decision that they gave in this case, the Washington State florist, who basically the state came after her because she refused to send flowers or arrange flowers for a homosexual wedding.
Right.
Well, once again, they ruled today that she was in violation of the state's discrimination laws.
Now, didn't Barronelle Stutzman go to the Supreme Court? Am I missing?
No, she went to the Supreme Court.
Right.
They threw it back to the state court to look at it again.
Okay.
And so today they are rendering their decision on the second look, and they're upholding their own decision, saying that she was in violation of the state's discrimination laws. So we're just seeing this kind of thing over and over again. I was reading a press release from early this morning from the Pacific Justice Institute. Brad Dacus, our friend Brad Dacus.
Yeah.
Talking about a Christian school, Riverview Christian Academy. Now, the story today actually starts back in January of this year when someone called the authorities and said this Christian school was housing illegal drugs, stockpiling weapons, and was preparing for an end times apocalypse. Now, you would think a phone call like that to a sheriff's office or something like that, okay, we'll send the sheriff out and kind of check this out. This doesn't sound right. They didn't do that. They sent, are you ready for this, 16 armed law enforcement from the California Highway Patrol
to a school,
2 K-9 units, and 17 social workers. Now, of course, they found out nothing was true. But being the state of California, and because it's a Christian school, they're not letting up. They are going after this school, and basically the bottom line is they want to put this school under state law regulations, and you know what that means. That means if it's a licensing facility, then the school is going to have to abide by the state's definitions of discrimination. So
it's a setup. Fred,
it's a setup.
Okay, because I was going to say, I mean, I'm no tinfoil hat wearer, as you know. We've met, we've been on the radio together before. Neither you nor I sit around and think about conspiracy theories. But doesn't it sound just a little too convenient that they say that the school is stockpiled with weapons and stuff like that, like it's some kind of David Koresh facility? They go out and they don't find anything. And instead of leaving them alone and apologizing, now they're going to put the school under some kind of administrative ruling so that they can teach the homosexual sex to the little kindergartners and all that stuff. Because, that's what California's into right now.
Oh, exactly. And this school has done nothing wrong. This school, it's Riverview Christian Academy, has operated as a private school for the past 25 years. And every year, it files an annual affidavit with the California Department of Education, as do other private schools and homeschools in that state. So it's not like, hey, this school has been operating out in the woods there. We didn't know about it. We're very suspicious. No. The state knew about this, but what they don't like about this school, it's a Christian school.
And they're not going to teach that garbage that they're pushing on the other parents in California, which I know you guys have been covering this at onenewsnow.com. You can find the story we're discussing and others at onenewsnow.com. You've covered the fact that in California, there are now almost 1,000 parents rebelling against that school district that wants to adopt this framework that it's like a Planned Parenthood, Human Rights Campaign mashup of just the worst kind of perversion. And they're going to make that a part of the curriculum for every student. And so K through 12, so little 5-year-olds who they know they're a boy or a girl, and they know that they have a mom and a dad or, whatever their family makeup is, but they don't know much else about reproduction or, intimacy. And they're going to teach these kids about homosexual sex and different kinds of sex acts and different gender possibilities, really ruining these kids. They're taking away their innocence, and parents are fighting against it. And the school district has said, yeah, thanks for letting us know you signed this petition, but we're still doing it. They don't care.
Yep. They don't want the parents to know it. And really what we're seeing in there, and I mean, when we used to talk this way several years ago, Stacy, perhaps people said, oh, no, there's those crazy Christians talking about that kind of thing again. But it's absolutely true. And I go back to a California case about a year ago. This is a story we were dealing about a year ago. Remember, I think it was a school district in the Sacramento area. And there the parents found out that their little 5-year-olds were being exposed to a transgenderism.
Yeah.
And there was one little girl who was brought into the classroom by the teacher and saying, Janie thinks she's now John. And isn't that absolutely wonderful? The parents found out about this. There was an uproar. There were school board meetings, and it was the end of the school year. So the school board says, we'll take a look at all of this, and then we'll come back. Well, in the midst of the summer, they made their decision. Not only were they going to continue this kind of practice with the kids, they said, we have no obligation to tell mom and dad what we're doing to your kids.
And so this is where I get on my little soapbox, and I say soapbox kind of facetiously, Fred, but the fact is, I think parents, what we do is we work super hard to try to get a home in a school district that is a certain rating. And we look at the price of the house, the rating of the school district, and the crime, and we say, okay, this place is relatively crime-free. The school district is AAA rated. It's top 2, top 10, whatever in the state. and it's a neighborhood that, we can still get to and from work. We're going to move here. We're going to put our kids in public school. And as parents, we've done our job. And in movies and in the secular world, that's probably all you got to do. But for Christian parents, our mandate is much higher. The threshold for us doing our job is much, much higher for us, because public schools nowadays are no longer a place where you can just drop your kid off and check their backpack once a week and let things go the way they're going. You have to know what's going on in these buildings. And the minute they let you know, Fred, your kids belong to us, they do not belong to you. That's when you say, actually, I have physical custody of these kids, and you don't bring them back to that building anymore. And I know it sounds radical and crazy, but what else can you do? Let your kid keep going there and learning about sex at 5 years old? You have to say, I'm keeping this kid home. I'm not going to let him go there anymore.
No, and that's a decision parents have to. We had to make, my wife and I had to make this decision, oh gracious, over 25 years ago, when we were living on the west coast of Canada, Vancouver, one of the most liberal cities in the world, really, and the province of British Columbia. And we just decided, you know what? We get one chance to raise our kids. Just one chance. There's no do-overs. And it's not like you bring a pet into the house and the next pet you get we're going to treat differently. No, you get one chance with your kids. And we were not going to sacrifice our kids at the altar of convenience by sending them off to this school that we know would teach them values 180 degrees to what we were teaching our kids at home. And I tell you what, we never regretted that decision. Now, we had to make financial compromises. We couldn't drive new cars. We couldn't own a house. But that was okay. And we say to this day, and our girls are now in their 30s, but we say today, we never regret making that kind of investment, because we see the results in our girls today in what they value and their value system. And I know for some folks, the idea of homeschooling, if there isn't a good Christian school around, or a good public school, because there are a few good public schools left.
There are
some great teachers, Christian teachers in these schools, and they still have some latitude. They still have some latitude to reflect biblical values in the school. But I'll tell you, as you move west, let me put it this way, or even to the coast, East Coast or West Coast, you're going to find more and more school systems like we're talking about in California that want to control the upbringing of your kids.
You know, Fred, our situation mirrors yours. And what we did was, like, I remember 2 distinct times where we prayed over the kids where the answer from God was almost immediate. And once was, I was working as, I think I was like, they called me like an executive assistant or something. I worked at a bank, and I'd been temping after I left the Air Force, and I finally landed a job at a bank. And then we were expecting Maya, who's our oldest. And my mom was like, oh, you're going to want to stay home with her. And I said, well, Mom, I just got this job. I haven't even been here a year, and it's a good job. And so she said, oh, that'll pale. You'll see. So I have the baby. And then I go back to work, and that whole week, it was nothing but trials and tribulations, Fred. I mean, she's crying all day. She won't drink the milk that I've pumped out and put into little bottles for her. Nothing was going right. Every day I'd pick her up, and you know how when babies cry, and then they've cried for so long, they've cried themselves asleep, so they're like going like that. Yeah. And she would be like, you know, that thin film of baby sweat they have on them when they've cried so hard, they're like literally sweating. I'd pick her up day after day, and she's like that. And I'm, driving home in the traffic and looking in the back seat, and she's sleeping in her car seat. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And I remember going home that Thursday night, and I was crying. And I told my husband, I said, keep looking at our budget. And it looks like if I stop working and, because I'm working, I'm buying clothes, I'm buying lunch, I'm doing, and if I stop doing all that and I don't have to pay for daycare, we could make it, but we're a little short. And I said, if I clip coupons and we don't eat out at all, we could probably make it. And he said, if you're willing to do it, I am. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe he said that, because I thought he was going to say, well, look, woman, you got to work. So then, Fred, I said, okay, let's pray about it. And he kind of looked at me, and we prayed. It was a quick prayer. And then afterwards, the next morning, I stayed home from work, and I remember getting up, and I started praying, and I said, Lord, I'm going to clip the coupons. And I said, if you would just let me stay home with this baby, I'll do whatever I need to do. And it was like 8 months later, my husband got a raise at work that made up for the difference, that little bit that was like, and it was so amazing, because I felt like I was so blessed to get to stay home. I didn't mind clipping the coupons. I didn't mind not going out. But it was as if the Lord said, you know what, this is what I want you to do, and I want to make sure you know that. And it was the same thing when we decided to take our kids out of public school, where I was on the board, the school board. I was the vice president of that school board when we made the decision to put our kids in Christian school. Wow. And so for the last year of my term, my kids weren't in the district, and they begged us to stay. And these were people that I loved, Fred. These were people that I loved these people like family, but the school district was teaching our kids that Jesus Christ was the founder of Christianity. You know, like Steve Jobs was the founder of Apple, you know, like that. And other things. And for us, the blessing was our kids would come home and show us. They would tell us. But I remember the backlash when we were like, we're leaving the district, and we lost some friends, obviously, but I've not regretted it, because there's been times when, Fred, I've been in my low place, and one of the kids has come to me and spoken some scripture to me, and they don't do that they don't get that from public school. They get that from sitting up under someone who knows God the way I know God, or more, or, you know, someone who's a leader in the faith, who has chosen to put their time into a building teaching kids the gospel in their lessons about everything else. Everything they're learning, they weave the Christian worldview into it. And so I just echo your comments. If you're in the audience today listening to Stacy on the right here, we've got Fred Jackson from American Family News, and you're sitting on that fence, and you're thinking, these numbers don't work out. God is the author and finisher of our faith. He will make any number work out for you. If you say, Lord, these are your kids, and you told me to bring them up in the way and tradition of the faith, and I am bound and determined to do it, and they can't be in the school anymore, He'll send you a co-op. He'll send you a Christian school. He'll send you the extra money you need. He'll send you a paid off bill so you don't have to worry about the money. He'll send you a way if you determine that you're going to obey him and bringing the kids up the way they should go. Because I'll say this to you, Fred, and I know people in this situation who they didn't make that choice that you made, you and your wife. Yeah. And they are now with their kids, they're liberals. They practice every kind of crazy, liberal ideology. And you can't get them back when they're adults. You can pray over them, but the time to catch them is while they're still in your grasp. Okay, you're on for one segment, or are you staying over for the... I'm not sure what we're doing here.
Just the one segment.
All right. Well, you know what? I love it when you come on the show. Thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thank you for the blessing. It's been great to be here.
Okay. Talk to you again soon, Fred.
Take care.
All right. Fred Jackson, News Director at American Family News, onenewsnow.com. For all the stories we covered today. We'll be back with more after this.
This is Uncommon Moments. Here's former Super Bowl winning NFL coach Tony Dungy and his wife Lauren sharing from their book Uncommon Marriage.
Today, over 50% of marriages end in divorce. But you can avoid being part of that statistic if you make your marriage a priority and work at it.
Lauren and I have spoken with trusted friends and pastors over the years when life has been challenging and the going tough. We've also spoken to them when times have been great and the wind was at our back. What we have found as a couple is that you have to work at your marriage to make it successful. It doesn't come automatically.
So ask yourself, are you working on your marriage? Make sure that today you tell your spouse that your marriage is a priority and that you're committed to working on it together.
Tony and Lauren Dungy, authors of Uncommon Marriage, learning about lasting love and overcoming life's obstacles together. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
My drug habit brought me down hard. I almost lost my life, but I made the decision to give Teen Challenge a try, and what's happened since then has been so incredible.
If you or a loved one are struggling with addiction, Adult and Teen Challenge can help. There are centers across the country, and you can find the one nearest you at 855-END-ADDICTION or at TeenChallengeUSA.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
There are many ways you can listen to the shows of Urban Family Talk. One of those ways is through our very own app. Whether you have an iPhone or an Android, just go to the App Store and search for Urban Family Talk. You'll have immediate access to 24-hour programming as well as the podcast for each show. You'll be able to tune in no matter where you are. Speaking of tuning in, we have our own channel on another radio app called TuneIn. Cool, right? Urban Family Talk is everywhere. Just download the app and take us wherever you go.
Donald Trump's America.
The president is commemorating the 75th anniversary of the D-Day invasion, when Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy on June 6, 1944. At a ceremony in South England yesterday, broadcast by BBC Studios, President Trump read a prayer offered by President Roosevelt.
Some will never return. Embrace these, Father, and receive them, the heroic servants, into thy kingdom.
Queen Elizabeth addressed the gathering, attended by a number of world leaders.
The heroism, courage, and sacrifice of those who lost their lives will never be forgotten.
After the ceremony, the president and the queen shook hands with D-Day survivors.
It was terrible. It was a terrible day. Great honor.
Today, President Trump is in Normandy for another ceremony. He's also holding bilateral meetings with President Emmanuel Macron. Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Almighty God, our sons, pride of our nation, this day have set upon a mighty endeavor, a struggle to preserve our republic, our religion, and our civilization, and to set free a suffering humanity. They will need thy blessings, for the enemy is strong. He may hurl back our forces, but we shall return again and again. And we know that by thy grace and by the righteous of our cause, our sons will triumph. Some will never return. Embrace these, Father, and receive them, the heroic servants, into thy kingdom. And, O Lord, give us faith. Give us faith in thee, faith in our sons, faith in each other, and faith in our united crusade. Thy will be done, Almighty God. Amen.
Oh, wow. I love hearing President Trump speak those words. It's a recitation of a prayer by President Roosevelt. And obviously he didn't write them, but the heartfelt sentiment there is so beautiful and so wonderful to hear those words spoken again. And I love hearing it from President Trump. Anytime that he expresses his faith or speaks to the nation in that way, it's a blessing to us. It's a blessing to us when our leaders acknowledge God and really place us in proper order as a country, even though everyone here isn't a Christian and everyone here doesn't agree. It's still beautiful to hear him do that, to express that. It's just, I can't get enough of it, and I hope that he'll continue on in that way. So call lines are open for you. It's Thursday. 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. So that was President Trump reciting Roosevelt's D-Day prayer, part of it. And I want to talk about this survey of 46% of voters. And then also, I don't know if you noticed or if you saw, because I don't think we pulled the audio. It was Josh Hawley ripping into this nominee. He's a Trump nominee. So he's been nominated by President Trump to go into the federal judiciary. And he has this case that he's been representing from his private law firm, in which he describes Catholics who don't believe in the redefinition of marriage as individuals they sincerely hold their beliefs, but they selectively apply them and use the same logic in their Christianity as the KKK. And so this was a story that I just couldn't believe it. And I was interested in making sure that we covered it here. So we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a little bit. I'm going to make sure you guys have time to call in if you want to share anything or discuss anything. 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. So the survey that I mentioned, I want to get to that first. 46% of voters support tariffs to force Mexico to get tougher on illegal immigration. Now, 46%, you might say, well, that's not even more than half of the people. Well, if you consider the mainstream media absolutely walling off the correct information about what's happening at the border, then it makes sense that it's only 46%. But that's still a huge chunk of Americans who are like, yeah, bring it on, President Trump. So if I were him, I would tell the Senate, So your conference doesn't necessarily support me using tariffs to pressure Mexico? Well, maybe your conference doesn't necessarily support maintaining Republican control of the Senate in 2020 because it is Trump's downdraft that will enable them to do that. Trump's coattails will either say, hey, we got all three parts of government back, or, hey, we're squeaking by with just the presidency for more gridlock. And I know the American people don't want that. I know I don't want it. Let me just speak on my own behalf. I don't want that. So this is a new report by Rasmussen Reports, a survey. 46% of likely voters support the leveraging of tariffs for this purpose, as President Trump is proposing to do, and 40% oppose the strategy. 14% are nincompoops and undecided. The survey found 60% support for the view that Mexican government has not been aggressive enough in stopping the flow of illegal immigrants. 68% support the view that it has not been aggressive enough in stopping the flow of illegal drugs. Oh, there you go. Connect the two up. And that's not spurious. That's actually, those two things go together. Illegal immigration and illegal drugs. Absolutely. So, of course, we know that Senator Mitch McConnell has said there's not much support in his conference for tariffs. That's for sure. But we don't care. We don't care what kind of support you have in your conference, Mitch. Now, you know I have been really kind to you, and I have been so nice to you after years of not liking you. I have come on this good air, and I have told the good people of American Family Radio about how we should all give you a chance because you're doing good things with the judges. And don't stop doing good things just because I'm mad at you about this comment you made. This is real life. This is how it works. I can be happy with you on one issue and totally against you on another, and that's where we stand right now. And it's not just me. We have so many. I'm not going to give out numbers, but the listening audience is large and in charge. Y'all are the business. This audience is the business. Pay no attention to the other networks that say they're the business. This is the business, this network. And we don't appreciate anybody going up against the president about immigration. That's how we feel. And so we're going to use our little pens and our little pads or our little electronic devices where we're keeping our little running notes, and we're writing down the names of the people who don't agree with the president on immigration. And we will be voting for the president next time, but we won't be voting for you. I hope you know that. And it's not like there's 2 or 3 of us. There's a lot of us. Enough to sway elections for you or against you. So wake up and smell the hot steaming coffee, and no, it's not Starbucks. It's American Family Coffee. Smell it and understand that if you go against the president on immigration, we'll be voting against you next time. And if next time isn't in 2020, if we have to wait till 2022, we'll do it. We'll wait. 2024, our memories are long. Our pen ink is not going to disappear. We will remember you when it's your turn. Don't go against the president on immigration. Bank on it. Mark this down. Mark this day down. Make sure and pay attention. You will not get away with going against him on immigration. His signature campaign issue, you should have stayed home. You shouldn't have run again if you didn't plan on supporting him on immigration. You should have stayed home. Not him, you. And if you didn't stay home and you plan on opposing the president on immigration, we'll send you home. We'll help you get back to your home district and become a civilian again. We will make you a civilian again. Just wait. We're not kidding anymore. We're tired of the lies. We're tired of you raising money on issues that you don't plan on supporting. If you can't be with the president on immigration, then get out of the way. All right, let's go to the phones. Kevin in Kansas. Hey, thanks for calling the show today.
It's a pleasure to talk to you again, Stacy.
Hello.
I wanted to say that our company that I work for, we send parts to Mexico for assembly and other kind of things. Before we sent everything down there, we did it all ourselves. So if the tariffs are going to cause an issue, and it's unfortunate that some people may not have the work down there to do like our work for us, it's not going to stop our production. We'll just continue to ramp up again and do those assembly and machining products, you know?
Here at home, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
In the United States. So it's not going to, the tariffs it's a strategy, of course, and it's not going to stop what we do. We're going to always continue on, after 9/11, we figured out how to make things work a little different, and it's a challenge, but we've come out of it, and we're still making money and making lots of money.
Okay. Now, and so this is a call that's needed. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for that update and that insight into how this works, because I think a lot of times, first of all, I don't work in a company that does things like that. And so I'm not exactly sure how that works. And now you've just explained it to us. And I think it's important for us to note that every company will have to make decisions based on what they're able to do. But for your company, it's a cost-saving measure for you to send the parts down to Mexico to be machined. It also does help with, it's trade. It's a boost to the economy. But if you can't do that because of the tariffs, then you can do it in-house, and it's not going to stop you from making money or employing people here in this country. And that's the most important thing, because the job that I'm most concerned about are of you and your cohorts who work here in the U.S., not the people who work in Mexico. No offense to them.
Right. Well, I'm also glad to put some fuel in your F-16.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for calling the show today. I appreciate you. So I got to say that makes me feel a little bit better, because underneath my support for the president, obviously I'm concerned about our American companies and our American jobs. But I also know that we are very creative people, and we have so many, he's one of those people where they have a job that they need to get done, and their current situation works for them, and they're perfectly fine with it. But if they need to reverse that and go another way, they can. And that's the beauty of the fluidity of the American enterprise. I just think, give some credit to these companies and the people who work there, like our good caller, for their creativity and their ability to problem solve. Joe in Arkansas. Hey, thanks for calling the show, Joe.
Yeah, well, thank you for taking my call, Stacy. What I want to say about the tariffs is that I support whatever President Trump is doing to straighten out this mess at the border, and I think all the people in Congress should support him a lot more than what they're doing also. But I think these tariffs would work a lot better, and they would help us a lot more if, number one, they were higher, and number two, it doesn't seem to be good for him to be threatening to put them on and then take them off, put them on, take them off. What we really need is a long-term stable situation where we have tariffs on the imports so that American producers have the advantage in the American market, and so we have long-term stability in this, and so that we have the jobs and industry and the know-how in this country, and keep the money circulating in the country instead of running up these huge deficits with the money draining out of the country. And I think our country's greatest wealth is the people that have the know-how and the skills to produce and do all the things that are important to do in the modern world, in the modern economy. And what I'm afraid of America is losing most because of these insane, destructive free trade policies is that we're losing the skills and the know-how and the people that know how to do these things, to make all the things that are needed for the modern world, especially electronics, where it's all made in China now. So, of course, now the Chinese have the know-how to make those things and build those things and so on like that. And I'm afraid we're losing, that edge in the modern world. We're losing the people that have those skills and knowledge in this country. And so, if we go on like this, if we go on losing those skills and know-how to foreign countries, then we are not going to be a significant country in the modern world if this keeps going on and on and on.
If you make any more sense, heads are going to explode, Joe. You got to slow down for us and let us keep up with you. You're absolutely right. You are right on that. And the point you're making is so common sense that a lot of people who wear the fancy clothes and get driven around in the town cars up in D.C., they can't get it. They can't even comprehend what you just said. But you're right. And I think what I was wishing, okay, I wasn't going to say anything about it, but Joe got me started. He passed the baton. What I really wish the president would say, next week, the tariffs are at 10%. And each week after that, they go up 10%. Each week they go up after that 10%, period. No maximum, max cap is 25%. None of that. Next week, the tariffs are 10%. After that, they go up every week, not every month, 10%. Because it's so easy for the Mexicans to stop helping these people. They seal their southern border and they stop busing the people from their southern border to our border. That's what they're doing. You want to see some charter buses get shut down and no longer have gas and drivers? If the president would have said that. And Joe is the one who's making that point. I'm just sharing with you what I when I heard he was going to do tariffs, I thought, oh, it's about time. And then when I heard it was 5%, I said, man, okay, that's not going to be fast enough. These people are going to, if it goes that slowly, it'll give the rhinos a chance to turn against the president and side with the Mexicans. And that's exactly what's happening. But I respect the president doing something. But he definitely could have been much more aggressive on that. And when Joe says bring those jobs back to the United States, no joke, bring them on back. We can machine our own parts. You know how I know? Our daughter, who's only 15, is on the drive team on her robotics club. And what does she do after school some of the days when they're in robotics club? She's machining and tooling parts. I got there one day. I was like, what have you been up to? I was machining some parts. And she starts naming some stuff off. I was like, what? You were what? Yeah, Mom. So first she starts describing this to me. And I'm like driving. I'm blown away. Because, at my age, if you'd said, come over here and machine this part, I would have run in the other direction because I was just an ultimate girly girl and not interested in that stuff. And here's our 15-year-old who, she looks like an ultimate girly girl, but the kid she's about to be an engineer. And she's literally, the stuff she likes to do, like cutting metal things with this special saw they have at their school that she can cut metal parts with. And then after that, of course, they have to be sanded down, machined, and then put together. Screwing metal things to other screwing things, other metal things with screws so she can make this robot. And our son is on he was on the programming side, programming the robot to do whatever they wanted it to do. We have the brain power here. Our kids should be learning these jobs. Our kids should be starting out in these jobs in high school and then, entry-level jobs. Why not? It's our stuff. If they want a piece of it, they have to do what we say. All right. God bless you from the Heartland. We'll be back with more. If you're leaving us, God bless from the Heartland.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
As millennials, we have more than $1 trillion in purchasing power. So businesses are watching us. But millennials are losing our faith. So we know Satan is watching us. Engage Magazine is for millennials by millennials. And it speaks to faith, purpose, and a closer walk with Jesus. Because above all, God is watching us. Visit EngageMagazine.net and listen Saturday afternoons at 5:30 Central on AFR.
Truth. Wisdom. Empowerment. Urban Family Talk. A ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. In the decades since World War II, Germany's vision of its place in history has changed dramatically. After the war, many Germans felt defeated, but attitudes have changed to the point that Chancellor Angela Merkel this week thanked the Allies for what she called the liberation of her people. Simon Owen has more from Normandy.
Around 35 American veterans of D-Day, most now well into their 90s, gathering here at the Normandy American Cemetery as President Trump paid tribute.
You are the pride of our nation. You are the glory of our republic. And we thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
The president saying they won back this ground for civilization. And he said thousands of Allied troops gave their lives not only for their comrades and countries, but also for the survival of liberty. In Normandy, Simon Owen, Fox News.
Some military families are in need of prayer this hour. And that's after a deadly training accident at West Point.
The investigation into what led to the summer training exercise accident that killed one cadet and hurt 22 others early this morning continues. A tweet from West Point earlier said it was a light-medium tactical vehicle that overturned. According to the West Point website, the Camp Natural Bridge site where the accident occurred was where training by the 3rd Infantry Division out of Fort Benning, Georgia, was being held. Conditions of the injured have not been released, nor has the identity of the cadet killed. President Trump tweeting, "We mourn the loss of life and pray for the injured." Gernal Scott, Fox News.
An immigration enforcement advocacy organization is not happy that in the middle of an immigration crisis, the Democrats are throwing fuel on the fire. Chad Groening has that story.
The Democratic-controlled House of Representatives passed the Dream and Promise Act of 2019, which would provide a pathway to citizenship for an estimated 2 million illegal aliens brought to the United States as children. The proposal would also offer legal status to an estimated 400,000 people given temporary protected status, mainly from Central America, Africa, and the Middle East. The bill is supported by left-wing pro-illegal alien open borders groups, including the AFL-CIO and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Dave Ray is a spokesman for the Federation for American Immigration Reform, who during an appearance on American Family Radio said this was not a wise course of action to deal with an out-of-control crisis at the border.
The best analogy I can draw is if you had a wildfire raging in your backyard and you called the fire department and the Democrats arrived driving the truck, and in the truck instead of water is jet fuel, and they're spraying it on your fire. And that's basically what passing an amnesty in the middle of a border crisis will do.
Ray says it is easy to sum things up from the Democratic perspective.
If you look at immigration, their motto has to be bring them in, let them stay, let them vote, because that really seems to be what's driving their actions right now.
Ray says, fortunately, the bill has little chance of passing the Republican-controlled Senate, let alone a presidential veto. I'm Chad Groening.
Supervisors in San Francisco have approved a proposal that would force the homeless and mentally ill into treatment. Mayor London Breed says city officials have to curb homelessness in alternative ways.
What you see on our streets, what you see playing itself out on our streets is a crisis, and we have to do something a lot different than we have in the past.
The plan would allow city officials to put people in treatment facilities if they showed in an emergency psychiatric hold more than 8 times in 1 year. Critics of the plan say it would strip people of their civil liberties. In final news this hour, an Uber helicopter service in New York City.
Uber revealing to the New York Times next month folks in New York City can start booking helicopter rides between JFK Airport and Lower Manhattan. Each Uber copter can take up to 5 passengers on a voyage of about 8 minutes. They can book a flight up to 5 days in advance, all through the company's app. Prices fluctuate on demand, ranging from $200 to $225 per one-way trip. For now, the aviation upgrade is only available to Uber Rewards members with a Platinum or Diamond status. The service takes flight July 9th.
That's all our time for this hour. Find more news at onenewsnow.com.
My addiction had me believing the lie that I could quit on my own. But when I came to Teen Challenge, this program helped me see the truth about my addiction and then helped me do something about it.
If you or a loved one are struggling with addiction, Adult and Teen Challenge can help. There are centers across the country, and you can find the one nearest you at 855-END-ADDICTION or at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
75 years ago, hundreds of thousands of young soldiers, sailors, and airmen left these shores in the cause of freedom. It is with humility and pleasure, on behalf of the entire country, indeed the whole free world, that I say to you all, thank you.
It was here that tens of thousands of the Americans came. The GIs who boarded the landing craft that morning knew that they carried on their shoulders not just the pack of a soldier, but the fate of the world. In defeating that evil, they left a legacy that will last not only for 1,000 years, but for all time. May God bless our great veterans. May God bless our allies. May God bless the heroes of D-Day. And may God bless America.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for holding on. If you want to join the show, you're welcome. 866-963-2037. 866-963-2037. I'm Stacy Washington, host of Stacy on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. So blessed to be with you today. We are commemorating D-Day all day today, and we just feel the blessings of the Lord, the mighty hand of God and his providence are so strong upon this nation, and we want to maintain that, and we want to come into right relationship with him and be obedient so that we can continue to receive all that he has for us. And winning wars is one of the things that God allows people who are under his favor to do. So I want to go back to the phones. AJ in Alabama. Hey, AJ, thanks for calling the show today.
Hey, Stacy. Held on. We lose you here at 3 o'clock, but I held on because I tried to call you 2 weeks ago. And, Stacy, I just wanted to tell you touche times 10 times infinity. Stacy, let me tell you something. You are exactly right. You are not the only one, and I know you get it from your emailers and your callers. We are sick and tired, Stacy, of these fake Republicans up there. And all they do every election, they ride in on Donald Trump's coattail to get reelected. And I'm telling you, you got 8 congressmen who you covered already, Stacy, who voted for that Equality Act, for example. And I'm telling you, we got to weed them out, Stacy. Stacy, I know you are. Please stay with it. And I'm telling you, Stacy, everybody who's legitimate media, like yourself, like Sandy Rios, and like Janet Medford, and a host of others, the legitimate ones, not the fake ones, not the PC politically correct ones, Stacy. I'm a vet like you. So is my dad. I've told you before. Stacy, we are sick of them. We have got to stay on point on these. You had 24 Republican senators last July, you remember, Stacy, voted for the transgender recruitment.
I can't believe that.
24 out of 50-something Republican senators voted for that crap. And they're still sitting up there in those seats.
They should be gone.
I'm kind of leery when that vote comes to the Equality Act with the Senate. I hope 24 of them, at least half of them, don't say yes.
I know, and that's what I've been worried about, is we've seen them turncoat before. It's like somebody else possesses their bodies and everything they ran on, they forget. It's like they literally forget that they told us that the reason you have to send me to Congress because you have to send me to the Senate. I'm going to be your voice there. I'm going to put my foot, I'm going to stand in front of these onslaughts against your children, your religious freedom, your religious liberty, against the unborn, against your own children who are in schools. They promise so big, and then they get there, and I have no idea what happens in it. And remember, I served on school board, so I've been under pressure before to vote this way or that way. And I know it's not the same. School board is so tiny, but and Congress is so much bigger. But it is kind of the same because it's people. And it is kind of the same because you have to remember what you promise people. Like you have to, either your word means nothing, which is what I think about these rhinos. Their word means nothing, or they lied. Either way, their word means nothing. You can't say to somebody over and over and over again, they travel around and they say things like, you know what, AJ, when I get to Washington, D.C., I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to support the president's agenda. Then they get there and they're standing with Mitch McConnell. Well, we don't support tariffs. Well, what do you support? Exactly what do you think we should do about illegal immigration if he's not allowed to do anything? And so I'm with you. If we don't start voting them out and paying them back for what they're doing, then we might as well just stop everything. Just forget about Washington, D.C. if we're not going to manage them and we're not going to tell them what to do. Oh, and thank you for your service, AJ. I appreciate when you call in. Thank you. I just get burnt up. Like you know how it is when you know, it's just like, it's terrible. There's no analogy that works. I just get lit up about this. And it's wrong for these people to lie to us. And it's even more wrong for us to let them get away with it. The names, we post them on Facebook, you know, I'm going to start, I've already started putting more of it on stacyontheright.com, and it's going to be a process of gradually moving over there, you know, for most of the content and links because of what I'm seeing. Like a friend of mine from way back comes on the show often, Stephen Solomon. He actually had his Facebook page deleted for no reason. He said it was just growing and it was looking so good. And he actually had a donate button on there that Facebook allows you to have your people who like your page donate to you. And he was earning a good amount of money from that. And the page was growing about 600 likes a week. And what happened? With no notice at all, he just, well, I can't say no notice. He wakes up and the page is gone. And in his email box is a note from Facebook saying he violated community standards. But they wouldn't say what. They wouldn't tell him which post it was. The page was gone and they've never restored it. So all that work, everything he put into it, they just eliminated it. They also have a blacklist of conservatives and Candace Owens and Brigitte Gabriel are on there. And I wonder to myself, well, I'm such small potatoes compared to those ones. I wonder if I'm on there. Well, I'm not going to wait for them to, pluck me off. If you can't find me anywhere, you can always go to stacyontheright.com. You know that. It's the same name as the show. You can always find the content and links to what we're doing there. So I mentioned junior senator from the great state of Missouri, Josh Hawley, and this judicial nominee, Burgum. And I rarely see Senator Hawley this worked up. He's really kind of, I wouldn't say he's bland, but he's a more laid back type of a person. But apparently, when he gets mad about the law, he can really get upset. Take a listen to this exchange. It's Hawley versus Burgum in number 5.
Let me ask you something else. In the same Masterpiece Cake Shop case, Justice Kennedy wrote that the government also demonstrated impermissible hostility toward religious believers when it questioned the sincerity of their religious beliefs. You do exactly the same thing in your brief in the East Lansing case. That's a problem, don't you think?
Senator, neither the brief nor my client has ever questioned the sincerity of their religion.
You certainly do. You say that they apply the teachings of their faith quite selectively. That's your phrase, is it not? Did you write those words?
I did, Senator, but
don't you think that's questioning the sincerity of their faith, that they apply it quite selectively?
Not at all.
Well, what are you trying to say there? That they're hypocrites?
No, I'm not.
Go ahead, explain.
I believe that they sincerely believe the position that they take.
But they apply it quite selectively?
At times.
Meaning what? What are we to infer from that?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I understand your question.
Oh, I think you understand it. You just don't want to answer it.
No, Senator, that's not true.
What is it that we are to infer from your questioning of whether or not they actually follow the teachings of their faith faithfully? Don't you think that's questioning the sincerity of their faith?
I disagree, Senator.
Well, all I can tell you is I am shocked by the statements that I read in your briefs. I am shocked by this kind of language. I'm particularly shocked by it in light of the Supreme Court's clear teaching that this kind of animus and these kind of hateful comparisons are out of step with the protections of our law and are not permissible. I mean, this case, the Masterpiece Cake Shop case, turned on these issues. It turned on this kind of animus. I mean, the fact that you stand by these comments is extraordinary to me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So the statements that he's discussing, and this goes back to, do you remember we played a little bit of the audio of Amy Coney Barrett during her confirmation hearing for the judiciary, the federal judiciary? This was not a Supreme Court nomination, but she still had to come before the Senate Judiciary panel and be queried on her statements, positions, rulings, etc. And they got into the kind of Catholicism she practices, where it's like a mentorship thing. I forget what it's called, but it is a different sect underneath the umbrella of Catholicism. But it really sounds more like the difference between Baptists and evangelicals. So still brothers and sisters in the faith, but a few differences. And they just it was brutal, especially Cory Booker asking her about gay sex. I mean, he was so vulgar and so disgusting. I was like thinking to myself, in a real world where I'm the person I am with the temper I have and the temperament that I have, which probably means I could never be in the role that Amy Coney Barrett is in, where she's been a judge for all these years. She went to law school and all that other stuff. But still, I just try to imagine myself in her shoes and just sitting there instead of getting up and walking out. Because getting up and walking out means you have to finish the confirmation hearing. You can't get confirmed without completing the hearing. I was trying to figure out if I would have been able to do it. To sit there with that disgusting man saying those horrible, awful things and just take it. And maybe I would have been able to. Maybe God's grace would have extended to that and I would have just been able, because if you're meant to be there, you're meant to be there, and God is, his grace is sufficient. But wow, so disgusting. And so you've got this guy, Burgum, and he tried to play the simpleton, but it didn't work. Josh Hawley was hearing none of his simplistic, I don't really think I understand what you mean type garbage. He was saying, either you believe that Catholics who believe the word of God and practice Catholicism are like the KKK, or you don't. And he kept saying he didn't, but then he said, I do. He couldn't figure out what side of that thing he was on. and he shouldn't be confirmed. Now, over at cnsnews.com, if you click on the video tab, you can see where a number of the senators are already coming out saying, you know, even some of the Democrats who are Catholics, they're like, well, I mean, you know, I'm a Democrat, but I am still a Catholic. You know, some of them have gotten insulted by the insinuation that it's the Democrats who are making the Catholicism a part of a religious test. But who cares about you being insulted? Remember, facts don't care about your feelings. You, on the Democrat side, are the ones who have made it an issue. And if that's the way you want to roll, fine, but don't expect anybody else to go with you on it. It is beyond me why this guy gets the nod from President Trump and gets put forward. Maybe it was a mistake, maybe it's a clerical error, or maybe they're putting him forward because he serves a purpose to teach other Democrats, don't come up here with your religious test because you're going to get smacked down. This is still America. And if that's the case, so be it. But I don't see him getting confirmed. And it's my hope that he doesn't get confirmed. But if he does, my pen is ready to write down the names of those who vote to put in someone who actually thinks that sincerely held religious beliefs under Catholicism are akin to the KKK. When have we last heard of Catholics riding around burning crosses in people's yards and killing black folk? Have we heard of that? Oh, okay. So I don't know what kind of comparison he thought he was making, but hopefully it means the end of his judiciary career. Because people like that belong in the private sector where he can be a bigot against religious people. He can do that on his own time, not the time that taxpayers pay for federal judges to actually hand down rulings that are supposed to adhere to the Constitution, which, by the way, gives us religious freedom. Remember, we have our rights under the Constitution, the right to the free and unencumbered practice of religion, the free press, free speech, freedom of assembly, and the right to protest and address our grievances with our government. Any potential judge who doesn't agree with those rights as they are enumerated in the Constitution for every American, that person cannot sit on the judiciary. That should be the standard. It should be a no-brainer. If you come across someone who is going up for a judiciary appointment and they can't say those all five of those are something or a thing or a constitutional thing, then why should they be there? They shouldn't. So even Romney, chief rhino in charge of rhinoism for the rhinos of America, said that we need to review the full record of the Trump nominee who compared Catholicism to KKK racism. Even old mittens, I'm a rhino for this day and this time, Romney. At the U.S. Capitol on June 5th, CNSnews.com asked Senator Romney if Michael Bolgren should have his nomination withdrawn. And he said, I'll look at the full record of an individual before I make a statement like that. Even old mittens can't get behind this guy. All right, we'll be back with Jarrett Stephan. Stay there.
It's amazing but true. When it comes to one of America's biggest household expenditures, healthcare, a lot of people think they've got no choice. People are used to thinking we have to do it this way, but they don't. Yes, you have the freedom to choose an alternative with your healthcare. It's MediShare, and it costs way less than the alternatives. The typical family saves $500 a month, not a year, a month. And if you're single, this can save you a lot too. And let's face it, a big reason MediShare is 400,000 people strong, it just works. They've shared over $3 billion in medical bills, so they can help share your needs too. Joining MediShare for so many people is one of those things that makes you say, why didn't I do this before? So yes, the time has come for something better. Look into joining MediShare and see why so many people are opting out of the old way and into the new. Why not look into this? Just call 855-PSALM-23. That's 855-PSALM-23. 855-PSALM-23.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
You know, sadly, it has become trendy in some circles to say that the world would be a better place without religion in general and Christianity in particular. I really do wonder if professors, commentators, and people on social media really believe this or just saying it without any serious reflection. As I like to sometimes say to my atheist acquaintances, I see lots of Catholic hospitals, Presbyterian hospitals, and Baptist hospitals. I've never seen a humanist hospital. In his book, Unimaginable, What Our World Would Be Like Without Christianity, Jeremiah Johnston explains what the world was like before Christianity and what the world would be like without Christianity. He then concludes by talking about the benefits in a world with Christianity. He was in my radio studio talking about the influence of atheism on our world, and then concluded by talking about the positive influence from Christianity in our world today. For example, there are an estimated 350,000 religious congregations in the United States, and the vast majority of them serve in some capacity as a community safety net for those in need. We also see churches and faith-based organizations helping out in disasters. So what is the economic impact of faith in America? According to one study cited in the book, religion's $1.2 trillion impact is more than the global annual earnings of Apple and Microsoft combined. Or you can look at it another way. How much do we save in social services because these are performed by faith organizations? Rodney Stark of Baylor concludes that the total current savings to U.S. society is $2.67 trillion. The book's facts and figures are a vivid reminder that the positive impact of Christianity in society is indeed unimaginable. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kirby's booklet, A Biblical View on Anti-Semitism, go to viewpoints.info/anti-Semitism. Viewpoints.info/anti-Semitism.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hey friends, welcome back to the show. It's my pleasure to welcome our next guest, Jarrett Stephan. He's the editor and commentary writer for the Daily Signal, one of my favorite websites, and co-host of the Right Side of History podcast. Jarrett, thanks for coming on today.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
It's great to talk to you. I'm really interested in this popular vote. So we've had a heritage guest on a couple of times, John York and some others, to talk about the national popular vote effort, because it's something that to me is so, it's so frightening, because it's one of the very bedrocks of the kind of government that we have that has really made us the envy of the free world and the unfree world. And that is that we don't have to worry about the tyranny of mob rule. And so for states to say, we don't like Donald Trump, we're going to eliminate the Electoral College, I'm flabbergasted that Americans can't see that what goes around comes around. And one day it could be conservatives voting down Democrats because there are more of us than there are of them. And then they would say, well, we need the Electoral College, but it'd be too late because it's gone.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think there is, unfortunately, a lot of narrow partisanship when it comes to this effort now to get rid of the Electoral College. And I think what's particularly disturbing about this movement is that instead of going through the traditional means of changing our Constitution, which is an amendment to the Constitution, this movement has generally embraced this kind of national popular vote compact, which is really a way to try to get around the fairly high bar that we have set in this country. I mean, we haven't really passed, besides the initial Bill of Rights, 10 Bill of Rights, really have passed 27 amendments to the Constitution. Obviously, it needs to be something that there's a broad-based acceptance in society. This movement really hasn't gotten that. They've gotten kind of a narrow partisan movement to join the cause, and they're trying to go through that way instead of through a constitutional amendment. So I think it adds to the danger of what's happening right now, is that this really is an aggressively partisan, a narrow movement that is trying to force something on the United States and change our fundamental way we elect presidents in this country. And I think that's really playing with fire, something that has really served this country really over 2 centuries and created, I think, really the most stable and certainly representative system in world history. I think that's not something that you just change based on a single result from an election.
And so they do, Jarrett, point to other times where they had the popular vote, but they didn't have the Electoral College. And I think there's 2 things that are connected here. There's that, like the popular vote win for Hillary Clinton, which I'm not a tinfoil hat wearer, but I don't believe that popular vote win was legitimate based on the number of illegal aliens we have in this country who live in states where they can get a driver's license, and the number of illegal registrations, voter registrations, and voter fraud that have been uncovered by Project Veritas. It makes me think that that is not exactly on the up and up. And then you connect that to their current love affair with illegal immigration and bringing people in and giving them status immediately, even though they're not citizens. And it kind of smells like a rat.
Sure, absolutely. I think one of the beauties, really, of the Electoral College, and maybe one of the reasons why they're so desperate to get rid of it, is that those kind of issues oftentimes are contained. I mean, if we have, for instance, California that is very loose with its election laws there, and it is not doing a good job of making sure that fraudulent votes aren't being counted that really is contained to the state itself. I mean, those California Electoral College votes, they're going to go one way no matter what. And in case of a national popular vote, you can see how manipulations of the votes, even on the state level, could actually have much larger implications in national elections, where there is almost more incentive to steal a few votes here, steal a few votes there, and you're starting to really change how elections turn out. In some ways, the Electoral College is a very good defense against, frankly, voter fraud and things like this, because it does contain things to the states. It's done on a state-by-state basis. So I think that's something that's certainly a factor in this kind of overall push to get rid of the Electoral College. It's a very stable, safe system that the founders wanted to create because they wanted to create a kind of representative system, not purely democratic, and one which we could contain issues like fraudulent elections and things like this, some things that have ruined republics in the past, for sure.
And so this really, because in your notes for this, you say that the fact that Nevada and Maine, those are liberal states, have rejected the National Popular Vote Compact effectively derails the movement, because those are their last two states that they would need, the blue-leaning states, and now they have to go forward and try to find red states who would agree or shift their efforts to the swing states. Now, what's the danger in shifting to the swing states to try to get the National Popular Vote Compact passed?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this because especially because of Nevada and Maine rejecting this, I think it makes their ability to, because what they have to do is they have to, according to their compact, they need to hit the 270 vote threshold. They currently only have 190 votes. Now there are only a few blue states. I mean, there's Oregon, which may be next, but ultimately they're going to have to start appealing to states that are red, certainly red-leaning states, especially given the narrowness and the partisanship of this movement. That's a very tough case to make, especially because there are a lot of progressive activists that want to make changes ahead of the 2020 election. That makes it much more difficult. And I thought that it's interesting that the Nevada governor, who is a Democrat, stood very strong on this issue, so that this is against the interests of my state, Nevada, which is a smaller state, which has been a swing state in a lot of recent elections, and saying essentially this movement goes against the interests of the people of Nevada, which I think is a very strong statement. I think it is going to be very difficult to convince more states in the future that are swing states or are red-leading states to say, well, why am I throwing my electoral power away, essentially? And I don't think that's going to be a very appealing thing. So I think that while this movement has gathered a lot of steam in the last year, there's been about 5 states that have signed on to this. I think they're starting to hit certainly a wall in this overall movement. As they get closer to it, there are going to be a lot more states. They're going to think twice before they upend the American electoral system.
So because I continue to have a problem comprehending how this is a lawful way to get rid of the Electoral College when the Electoral College is in the Constitution, and we really actually have to have a constitutional convention or an amendment of the Constitution in order to get rid of it. How is it possible to do it this way? How is this lawful? Or is it that they know it's not lawful, but it would have to go to the Supreme Court to get it overturned?
I think that's what a lot of them are banking on. It's interesting. In the past, I mean, even Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, certainly hardly a conservative, has said that she doesn't like the Electoral College, but she thinks the only way to get rid of it is through a constitutional amendment. I think the proponents of this National Popular Vote Compact are hoping that maybe they can get something done and maybe they can get this thing through the courts when push comes to shove. But as you said, this is something that really, although the states have a great deal of leeway in how they carry out their elections, they can't actually pass laws that directly contradict things that are in the Constitution, which the Electoral College is. So I think this movement represents certainly a danger, and as more states get along to this, I think it is very much a problem. But I think the proponents of getting rid of the Electoral College are going to have to contend with the courts. I think they're going to have to contend with a lot of the American people who I would hope will start to see that the Electoral College is a valuable part of our electoral system and has served this country very well. And I think they will ultimately run up against that wall. But I mean, look, things can. I think they're trying to test things out in the courts. I think they feel that they might as well take this chance, given the fact that passing a constitutional amendment to get rid of it is highly unlikely at this time.
Yeah, and the other issue is I read an op-ed by a conservative writer who said that ultimately, if nothing else, if they were able to get to 270, they would then contest the results of the next election, because it looks pretty certain that just like Barack Obama was reelected, and a lot of us weren't happy, but he still was, the incumbent has the upper hand. Donald Trump gets reelected, but the National Popular Vote Compact throws the legitimacy of his election ultimately to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, which at the beginning of this movement was still a swing court, but now it's not. Now it's much more conservative. It's not fully conservative in my opinion, but it's much more conservative than it was. But it would still be ultimately a delegitimizing factor that would be much more damaging to President Trump, almost than losing, because this would mean that they would say, not only did you lose the national popular vote, but the Supreme Court gave you the win over the will of this many states and this many millions of people. Is there validity to that thought process?
I think there's definitely a lot of viability. I mean, after all, especially many on the left are trying to delegitimize this presidency to begin with. I think that to find a way to do so, even if it doesn't mean outright winning an election, to try to undermine potentially a second term or things like that, I think definitely factors into this whole process. I think there's a reason why they're trying to build momentum for this movement leading up to the 2020 election. I think it's absolutely a campaign goal. And I have to say, I mean, at the end of the day, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, I mean, shame on them for trying to change the American electoral system in this sense because of a partisan loss in 2016 to try to influence an election right down the line. I mean, the fact is, if Democrats and progressives want to win elections, they need to spend a little more time convincing people in some of these states that have gone to the other side, like states like Michigan and Pennsylvania, instead of trying to rack up the national popular vote, which Hillary Clinton did in her 2016 election, focusing on some big cities to try to move that national popular vote up, instead focusing on doing what the actual Electoral College is supposed to do, which is get a broad-based consensus. And because a lot of progressives, and Hillary Clinton in particular, couldn't do that in 2016, now they want to throw the board up into the air and blow up our American institutions that have served this nation so well. I think that is a very revealing attitude from a lot of these people, and I think it applies, of course, to other institutions as well. They're going after the Supreme Court, going after the state of the Senate, things like this, and I think it is telling. When you start to play with fire, you start to mess around with the Constitution, I think every American should be wary of that and should say that, maybe we should think twice about doing this, something that served our country and served ourselves as a free institutions in this country so well for over 200 years.
Yeah, I'm with you. So one of the things that and I don't know if you've read this book before. You obviously have an understanding of the Constitution, but one of the books that was recommended to me back when I first started doing some public commentary was The 5,000-Year Leap, which coincidentally, Amazon actually characterizes it or categorizes it as fiction or something like that. It's a book that looks at how the founders came to the form of government that we currently have. Most of us, especially if your civics was not complete and, utterly well done in high school, we think that the founders came up with this. There might have been some trial and error or some meetings. What we don't understand is that they actually went through experiments with different kinds of government before they actually decided on representative republic. And the reason they decided on representative republic is because tyranny of mob rule, and also at the time, there were large population centers and then states and territories that were very sparsely populated, and they wanted each citizen to have the power of their vote be the same. And this is something that's lost on people who've not had civics. And so you've elucidated this so perfectly. I just want people to understand it's not like they just threw a coin in the air and said, you know what, this might work, representative republic, let's do it. This was careful, deliberative, and experimental, and then they yielded a certain result that they thought, this is what we want. This is the best that we can do. And we can't just let that go. We can't destroy that kind of thought and careful consideration with, just because people are mad because they hate Donald Trump.
Absolutely. I think it's interesting, especially at the convention itself, which, of course, there was a great deal of debate. There was a lot of differences of opinion. There were compromises to be made. But the Electoral College was one of the things that had some of the most broad-based agreement on. I mean, Alexander Hamilton noted that in Federalist 68, and he talked about the Electoral College as being this important institution that would preserve this idea, this concept of federalism, protecting how states do things differently in those states. I think that's an important concept that's being lost, I think, in modern America. And he said the electoral system that they created, while it wasn't perfect, because no human institution is perfect, it is excellent. And I think that really defines what the Electoral College has been. And I think it's more than that. It has been time-tested over 2 centuries. I mean, those who keep saying that we need to get rid of the Electoral College can't quite explain what exactly is so wrong with it. I mean, are you saying that the election of George Washington was a mistake? Are you saying the election of Abraham Lincoln was a mistake? Even though he only got 37% of the popular vote, he won because of the Electoral College. Was that a mistake? Was that a flaw in our system? I think that was actually there by design. I think that was to show the strength of the system. And I think even the 2016 election, which they lament so often, itself was the strength of the election. Again, there were states like Pennsylvania and Michigan that felt like they were being ignored in politics, and you had a different candidate to appeal to them and won an election. That's based on this kind of broad-based consensus that, look, we don't just have the large population centers that determine our presidents. We don't just have the Californians and the New Yorks. We really have to get the opinions of the whole nation, and certain specific states have different interests over others. That's really the beauty of this system and why it functions so well, especially in such a large, broad-based republic like ours.
And you know what, Jarrett? I have to say, one of the things that I still think to this day is so fascinating, and I see it a lot. Like, there's this book called How Money Walks by Travis Brown. He used to live in Missouri, and they're in Florida now, but he still has a significant presence in the state. He wrote this book about how Americans tend to follow low taxation. So if your state has no state property tax or no sales tax or no income tax, it's rare that a state would have none of those. But if you have one of them that you lack, and a family is looking at their tax bill, say in the state of Missouri, and let's say, their total tax bill for the state of Missouri is somewhere like $12,000, and they could move to Nashville, Tennessee, and effectively save $8,000 of that. So pay $4,000 to Nashville or $12,000 to Missouri. A lot of families look at that, they add that number up over time, and they say, this actually amounts to our college savings account for one of the kids, and they make that move. This happens every day of the year, every decade. It happens. It's a constant. People flowing out of high tax areas into low tax areas. And that's just one example of what the founders wanted for us, which was different states experimenting with ways to have their people live, and other people choosing because they want that, or maybe you want the high taxes. So you move to Illinois or New York or California. And that is what makes our nation so unique, that we're not all forced to live in exactly the same way in every single state. And the Electoral College is just part and parcel to the beauty of that whole system. You've been awesome. Jarrett Stephan, editor and commentary writer for the Daily Signal. Thank you for coming on today, sir.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
All right. Talk to you again soon. Have a great weekend. All right. You know what? We have one segment left, and if you want to join us, I'd be happy to talk to you. 866-963-2037. Be right back.
This is Kay Arthur. Are you hungry for love? Unconditional love, because unconditional is what you need. You've blown it, made a mess of life, and deep inside you wonder if anyone could love you the way you are. God does, and that's why God let his only son, Jesus Christ, die on a cross almost 2,000 years ago. Jesus died for you because God knew you would fail to measure up. That's how much God loves you. The Bible, God's book, says while you were a sinner, a person who failed and missed God's standard, Jesus died for you. But that's not all. God raised Jesus from the dead. Because Jesus lives forever, you can too. If you want unconditional love, dear one, and a new start on life, call 888-NEED-HIM. Let me repeat that. If you would like to speak to someone right now about beginning a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, call 888-NEED-HIM.
I'm Will Addison, Director of Urban Family Talk. We desire to be a movement of time tellers. In 1 Chronicles 12:32 it says, the sons of Issachar were men who had understanding of the time, to know what Israel ought to do. In these perilous times, God is raising up a people of discernment who will see, pray, and act. We sound the alarm as watchmen. We cry aloud that God's people may be activated for his service. Join the movement at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Hi, friends. There's a new show in town
on Urban Family Talk, nightly, 7 p.m. Central. Join me, C.L. Bryant, as we build the bridge to conversation throughout our great nation, the greatest nation on the face of the planet, the greatest success story the world has ever known. Nightly, the C.L. Bryant Show over Urban Family Talk, 7 p.m.
Military Matters.
D-Day, 1944. General Dwight Eisenhower.
Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the Great Crusade. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms on other fronts, you will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened. He will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. The tide has turned. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck, and let us all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Look, conservatives have ignored this issue for far, far too long. And here I'm not banging my usual drum about conservatives ignoring education, although that's part of it. Conservatives in the 1980s, during the Reagan Revolution, won politically. And they won a lot of foreign policy victories, and they won some domestic victories. But what they ignored were institutions of culture. K-12 education, universities, the core of bureaucrats that runs the government, Hollywood, right? These are cultural and governmental institutions with enormous amount of power to shape public debate, and in the case of education, to shape young minds. And conservatives essentially ceded those territories to the left and went home happy about their victories in the political arena in the 80s. I think we're in grave danger now of repeating that mistake.
And that was Inez Stepman. Inez Felcher. She has actually been on the program before. She's from Independent Women's Forum. Inez Felcher, she joined the program to talk about education. It's one of her hot button issues. And the point that she's making about conservatives winning politically but losing on the culture is why we have the kind of results that we're seeing in California that Fred Jackson and I were talking about from onenewsnow.com. Look, it's not rocket science, but it is something that we kind of do. We say, let's get out the vote. Let's make something happen. We go knock doors. We share pamphlets. We make phone calls. We phone bank. We go do everything we need to go do. And then once we win the state legislature, then we go on about our business, working, making money, going to church, doing, helping the kids at school. And then when we look up and they're trying to teach the kids about homosexual sex in the classroom, and we're like, wait a minute, we don't have the power to stop them because a bunch of well-intentioned nincompoops, the parents of the other kids, are out there marching and sending out notes about how this one's a racist, that one's a racist. I had someone actually say to me, I was really disappointed in you. And I know you guys are probably like, if you're holding your coffee or you're typing on your computer, you're like, wait, what? Yes, someone came to me that I know who, she calls herself a moderate, but I mean, let's face it, she's like Mitt Romney. She's a leftist. She's disappointed me because she seems to remember me having a sign in my yard for someone that she considers to be a racist. Now, for the purpose of this story, I guess it's instructive for me to note that if you've just tuned in, I'm permanently tanned and not really in the habit of making racists my candidate. I voted for Donald Trump. What of it? And this person who confronted me, she is not permanently tanned, but she still felt like she had enough, capital between us, or our friendship was strong enough, or whatever she thought, that she can actually try to call me on the carpet about a sign. Now, the interesting thing about the story is I didn't have that person's sign in my yard. I didn't. Not because I didn't support her, though. I did vote for the woman, but I didn't have her sign in my yard. So when I pointed that out, she again reiterated that the person was a racist, and she knew she was one. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but why do you get to tell me who I can and can't vote for? And why do you get to determine whether or not she's a racist? I said, what if a bunch of people that I know think you're a racist? And the look on her face is kind of like, well, why would anybody think that about me? My child dates someone of ethnicities. My child is dating someone who is a person of color. And I said, I didn't know that. I did not know that. But in the hypothetical that I'm giving to you, the same situation, you're telling me this woman's a racist. I happen to have met her a few times. I don't think she's a racist. You think she is. What if someone said the same thing about you? Why do you talk to her? Why do you spend time with her? Why are you friends with her? She's a racist. She was like, but I'm not. I said, and that's the same thing I say about this lady. She's not a racist. That was convenient for you. You defeated her in the school board election, and you were able to do that because you spread this rumor, but she's not a racist. So now what? And also, why do you feel like you get to tell me who I can and can't put a sign in my yard for? I'm a grown woman with mortgage and kids and husband. You can't tell me what to do. Now, where does this story go? Well, what I see is liberals feel like they have the right to address you on what you believe, who you support, etc. And we just want to be left alone. And so we keep to ourselves and we vote and we participate, but we're not out there actively evangelizing like this chick was trying to do to me. That didn't work. She went about it all wrong. If she's trying to get me to come over to her side on something, you don't do that by accusing me of supporting a racist. But the point is, she didn't have any qualms about just approaching me and bringing this subject up. And still to this day, sometimes I'll see her and I'm thinking to myself, you are just so like out of control. Like, why did you think you could? Again, they don't have any qualms about it. So the most important thing we can do is get outside of our comfort zone, get outside of what we feel like we're willing to talk about, and start getting the truth out there. Start talking to these people about this stuff. Now, back to Inez Felcher. She was talking about this sex ed curriculum in California and how these parents rose up against it and what the result was. And I found this to be kind of shocking, but this is where we are, which is why I continue to renew my call to you that you must take your kids out of these schools. And I don't like losing. And I am not about running away. But when you're talking about your kids, it's not losing, it's winning. When you're talking about your kids, it's not running away, it's protecting them. Difference. So let's listen to her in number 2.
Look, since 2016, conservatives have held a certain amount of electoral power. We've held some of the levers of government and since actually 2010 and 2012, conservatives and Republicans at least have held plenty of seats in state legislatures, plenty of governorships, but they have not focused on where the left is strong, and that's in institutions of culture. And this is the end result of allowing leftist progressives to run rampant in our institutions of culture, and particularly in K-12 education, where for some reason conservatives don't want to prioritize the one solution that might actually change things, which is to give these parents who are protesting this curriculum. We have 800 parents in Fremont. Fremont is in the Bay Area. I promise you, it is no bastion of conservatism. You have 800 parents signing a petition to prevent their district from using this framework. Their district is going to use that framework anyway. The only way to change things is to empower those parents with school choice, to allow them control over the dollars that all of us, the public, invest in public education, because there's no such thing as a values-neutral education. And when conservatives got out of education, the progressive left got in, and this is the end result.
And when they get in and they start peddling these ideas, fighting it is like, it's like fighting against water. Water always wins because water wears down rock. Water melts almost everything else it comes into contact with. It makes things rot. It makes things mold. Once they turn their faucet on, it's very, very difficult to fight them. It doesn't mean it's impossible, but it means you're going up against a group of people who they basically say to themselves, we'll just outlast you. That's what water does. We'll just outlast you. You will eventually leave. Your kids will eventually no longer be in the district, but I will still be here. I will still be able to enact my agenda. I will still continue to fight for these things, and there won't be anything you can do about it. And so that it can be depressing. It could be something where you're like, oh man, I can't win at this, but you can. Ultimately, the winning is when your kids are sheltered from the influence that these people are trying to exert over them. Ultimately, the winning is when a family says to you, wow, I never thought I'd say this before, but we're pulling our kids out. We noticed you pulled your kids out. That's winning too. Or it's when groups of parents who are in the district who they're not leaving, their options are such that they're not leaving, they get together and they start to form groups and fight back. They get people elected to school board. They start to change the tide. But in the end, if you've not said anything, if you've not shared the stories about the sex ed classes in California, the push for Planned Parenthood to be in every single school district, they're already there. They're already in all the public schools. Their push to shape the curriculum around sex education, their desire to come in between parents and kids so that kids don't feel comfortable discussing their bodies and their temptations with their parents. These things have to be something that you're willing to have a conversation with your friends. And it's as simple as saying, you get the Evite, evite.com. You go there, you click on one of the pictures you like, you invite a bunch of moms over by email, and you say, hey, or you invite the moms and the dads. Come over for free appetizers, desserts, and we're going to talk about the kids' school district. And some of the parents are going to dismiss it. They're not going to discuss it. They don't have time. But the ones who show up, that's it right there. Those are your people. And then you don't get off into tangents talking about the latest tax requests for the municipality or whether or not your road in your subdivision is being paved or the trustees. No, you don't talk about any of that. You make sure you have an agenda. You've written down, here are some points that we want to cover. Here are some news stories about our school district or things that are happening in the school district next door or things that are happening in the school district that our school district considers sister school district. Do you know who yours is? Most public schools have other school districts that they consider to be like they travel back and forth between each other. They share information. They share curriculum. They share best practices. Find out who yours is. You get those articles together. You make some photocopies. Or print them out on your home computer. Print out a list of links of stories that you want people to read. You hand this stuff out. Let everybody, eat the little meatballs with barbecue sauce on them and talk. And then at some point you clink the glass and say, everybody, sit down around on the couches and everything and let's talk. I asked you to come here because blah. And remember what a lot of people, I'm talking about this, you're thinking, I can't talk in front of 20 people in my living room, or I can't fit 20 people in. So meet at the library, meet at the coffee shop, meet in your basement. People live. We're all alive on this earth together. It doesn't have to be fancy. It's not your house that they're going to be looking at. It's the content that they're going to want to have an opportunity to discuss with you. And so you get your agenda together. You get your photocopies together. You get some hors d'oeuvres together. The people are sitting there. You have their attention. You tell them what's going on. And then you say, this isn't about turning you into an activist or turning you into some kind of nobody here starting a blog. All we're doing is we're saying we pay taxes here. Our kids go to this school and we don't want this. Does anybody have any ideas? And open the floor up and let people talk back to you about what they think they want to do. And then another thing you can do is, so don't make it about politics. Don't make it about, how many people in the room are Republicans. Nope. On an issue like public school, where your kids go and everybody pays taxes, it's nonpartisan. The issue is, are you okay with them teaching our kids this? If you are, then you're probably not going to be interested in the rest of the content we have here. But if you think this is kind of crazy and kids shouldn't learn this at school, then we have something to talk about. We got to start doing this. We can write our congressman, and I encourage you to do that. Send an email. The phone calls are important, but I think the emails are best. Talk to these people. Tell them what it is that you want. Make something happen there by email, and then follow it on with a meeting. Make sure that you're gathering people together so that you can get the most impact out of your time together. And that's really all I can. That's it. That's what you can do. So I want to also, I talked to you about this email that Ali Pack sent out, and they're pretty angry with President Trump. And so we just have a couple minutes left here. I want to make sure you have that. They're talking about this amnesty bill, H.R. 6, that was passed by Congress, the House. Basically, it's a clarion call to illegal aliens to rush the border. It would give amnesty to 2.5 to 3 million illegal aliens who are already here. And we know that President Trump has said before that, he would sign some kind of amnesty in exchange for certain concessions on the wall. There is already an executive branch amnesty in place for 700,000 DACA illegal aliens. And there are obviously way more than 11 million illegal aliens. I hate that number. So there's also these Republicans who've not been good to us. They keep voting for these illegal alien schemes. Congressman Don Bacon, Republican, Nebraska. Mario Diaz-Balart, Republican, Florida. Brian Fitzpatrick, Republican, Pennsylvania. Will Hurd, Republican from Texas. Dan Newhouse, Republican from Washington. Chris Smith, Republican from New Jersey. Fred Upton, Republican from Michigan. Those 7 they're a part of that head rhinos of America in favor of rhinos running everything into the ground, secret closet Democrats, but rhinos on paper and in real life. That's who these guys are. Mitt Romney is one of them, but he didn't vote for this. So what we have to do is make sure we keep a list of their names, and we have to keep the pressure on the president not to sign any amnesty. We cannot have our support of the president on so many other issues like the pro-life issue blind us to the fact that he's very susceptible to yielding on immigration because it is such a huge problem and he's getting no cooperation. And the Republicans who are against him on immigration are applying pressure as well. Not the kind of pressure we can see, the behind-the-scenes kind that actually yields results. Let's continue to pray for the president over our meals and hold these people accountable at the next opportunity when they're asking for our vote. You don't have to be rude, but you do have to say you didn't support Americans on sealing the southern border, and therefore you cannot have my vote, and I will publicly oppose you at every turn. That has to be our response to those who would stand against our wish for a sealed southern border. God bless you from the heartland. Have a fantastic evening. Until tomorrow, Stacy Washington.